Okay, I got my 12 jurors here. Actually, there's 16, but only 12 get to deliver. All of them are in the room. Okay, but only 12 get to, vote on guilty or not guilty, right? And they keep hashing it out and they keep trying to convince everybody. And I got one guy, I got Michael over here, who thinks all 11 of you want to convict this guy, right, on second-degree murder. Michael says, you know what? I have reasonable doubt. I don't think this is, whatever. And you guys are trying to convince him that, hey, all the elements have been met. Why would you doubt? Blah blah blah. If he hangs on, and you can't convince him to change his mind, and he doesn't have to change his mind, okay? And you guys can't change your minds. He can't change your minds, and you can't change his mind, or whatever. Okay, you do this for days. You go back to the judge, say, "Hey, judge, man, seriously, we can't come to an agreement." Okay, the judge will say, "Hey, you know what? Do you want us to read you back some more evidence, some transcripts from what went down? I mean, what can we do to help you out here?" And so, okay, you want some? Okay, we can give you the transcripts, whatever. Read this part back and whatever. And he says, "Go back to your room, go back to your jury room, and keep talking it out. Keep deliberating. Okay, see if you can come to a decision." You go back there for a couple more days. You keep going at it. You can't convince him to vote for guilty or not guilty or whatever. He can't convince you to acquit. You can't convince him to convict. One guy holding out. Come back and say, "Hey, judge, man, seriously, we cannot come to a decision." He's like, "Okay, I guess we have a hung jury." Okay, mistrial. Does that mean that Derek Chauvin has been found innocent? Nope. Does that mean Derek Chauvin has been found guilty? Nope. Does that mean Derek Chauvin's not going to be tried again? Nope. Goes back, the DA, okay. Puts, okay, I guarantee you if it's a mistrial, this will be retried again. Okay. And so they go back, okay, so a couple months from now, they start it all over again. They select a whole new jury. They do a whole new trial, prosecution, defense, and they try and get a conviction with a whole new jury. Okay, that's a mistrial. So 5 options here: conviction on second, conviction on third, or a conviction on manslaughter, or an acquittal, or a hung jury. That is what could happen in this case. So, acquittal. Let's say they acquit Derek Chauvin. They say there's not enough evidence for any one of those charges. Okay, he's acquitted. Let's just say that. What do you think will happen after that? Or anything? Do you think anything will happen after that? Huh? If he got acquitted. What, protests or riots? How many of you think that could happen if he gets acquitted? You guys in here. You think that'll happen if he gets acquitted? What's your name again? I'm sorry. Emery. Oh, that's right. Emery. You think that'll happen if he gets acquitted? You don't think so? So in a few weeks after the defense rests, so right now the defense is going to start their case. They're going to start poking holes, trying to poke holes. All they have to do, the defense does not have to prove he's innocent. All they have to do is provide doubt in some of those jurors' minds. I know. They have to make them question what the prosecution told them. So all they're going to do is they're going to try and punch holes in that prosecution's case. Okay, y'all with them? Okay. That's all they got to do is, promote some doubt, reasonable doubt. So you think if they acquit him, there's not going to be some social unrest? Nicole, what do you think? You don't think so? So they come back on the acquittal. You don't think a lot of people are going to be like, what? So what do you think? What do you think is going to happen? What happened this summer? I mean, all over the world, not just in our country, right? What do you think? Putting you on the spot here. I know. Don't worry. There's glass between us, so you're totally safe. Yes or no? Do you think there's going to be social unrest if there's an acquittal? You don't think so? Marabella, what do you think there? Think so? Emilio, right? Emilio, what do you think? Think so? Michael, what do you think? I can't hear you, what?
Yeah.
You think so? How about you folks that are sleeping or eating Cheerios? Let's go with Nevaeh. Are you awake, Nevaeh? I'm gonna take that as, oh, you're here. Nice. Be nice if somebody turned your cameras on too, but that's all right. Hey, what do you think, Nevaeh? If they quit shaman, do you think there's gonna be social unrest?
I don't know.
I don't know either. Nobody knows. What do you think? All right, I'll look at your ear. What do you think?
I have no idea.
Okay, well, feel free to, nobody knows. And the rest of you type in the chat box as long as you're professional appropriate, because we can all see it. Okay. What do you think? Do you think there's going to be social unrest if they quit him? Not everybody at once. This is super fun. Oh, thank you, Paulina, for playing along. Anybody else want to show me that you're still functioning out there in Zoom world? Come on. Just type something in or use your big boy or big girl voice. Yes, yes. Huh. Yep. I personally, I think there's going to be social unrest. I can almost guarantee you there will be. I can almost guarantee you it will be, not almost guarantee, I shouldn't say that. I strongly believe that if they acquit him, we're going to have something similar to like this summer. It could be pretty. So think about this. What do you think is going to happen in law enforcement agencies, police agencies, when that verdict is ready to come out in a few weeks? Okay. When that verdict is ready to come down, what do you think police stations, law enforcement agencies are going to be doing around the country, if not around the world? What do you think is going to be happening? What? Preparing. Good answer. How do you think they're going to prepare? Okay. I give you credit for that one. Boarding up the windows, possibly. Even businesses. You think business might be preparing that way? Yeah. So in a few weeks here, probably a few short weeks, maybe 2 weeks or less, we're probably going to have a verdict here, right? Depending on how long the defense takes in their case. The day that verdict is scheduled to come out, I guarantee you, they're probably already prepping for it right now. Law enforcement agencies are going to be on alert. Businesses might be boarding up their windows in case, in the event that there's an acquittal, there could be a lot of social unrest. Y'all with me on that one? Okay. Wow. How many of you guys have ever heard of Rodney King? Anybody in this room ever heard of Rodney King? Never? What? Bingo. So how many out in Zoom world have ever heard of Rodney King? Elena, feel free to type, chat, show me some signs of life here, folks. Seriously, I'm working hard. These guys are helping me out. You guys are sitting there. Some of you are doing a good job. Come on. How many of you is anybody? Put in the chat box, anything. Show me a sign of life. Okay. That was in LA. Yes, it was in LA. So LA riots were about 30 years ago, 1992, if I remember correctly. LA had riots for about 6 days. LA was on fire. 1,000 buildings were burned. Almost 60 people were shot, killed. It was out of control. Out of control. The National Guard was called in, over 2,000 National Guard troops, 800 CHP officers from all these, Riverside County Sheriff, all these agencies sent officers into LA to try and, restore the peace. It was bad, really bad. You could see the smoke from here. You could see the smoke. 1,000 buildings were burnt, over $1 billion in damage. 1 billion. 60 people were killed. firefighter was shot. There's video of this one trucker getting pulled out of his truck on the street and getting beat with a brick. Okay, because he was white, basically. And it was just bad. Go check it out. If you want, I'll show you a quick video in a second here, just so you can see. I'm gonna have you guys compare the two. So Rodney King happened about 30 years ago, almost 30 years ago. Racial tensions were like really high. Kind of like I think they kind of are right now, kind of a similar situation, right? And does anybody know what started the LA riots? What event started the LA riots? They filmed it. Yeah, there was a lot of, he got beaten by police officers. So Rodney King got beaten by police officers, yes. That particular event wasn't what really started the riots, though. Okay, it eventually led to it. So Rodney King got into a high-speed pursuit. He get chased by CHP officers on a freeway, I think it was. And he ends up crashing. Okay, big dude, Rodney King, big dude, African-American dude. And they try to get out of the car. LAPD shows up, right? So they got about, I think there was like 12 officers total there. And he's not really cooperating. He's intoxicated. I think he had PCP in his system too. Wasn't cooperating. They get him out of the car, and these LAPD officers start wailing on him with their batons. They struck him something like 57 times. Yeah. Well, that was back then. Everybody didn't have cameras on their cell phones. Okay, back then we didn't have all these cool cell phones. However, back then we had camcorders, these handheld, you know what I'm talking about, right? Some dude has his camcorder, civilian, starts videotaping it. Videotapes the whole thing. Okay, well, videotapes the beating part, and he videotapes it, and he gets this whole beating on tape. He goes to the police, says, "Hey, this tape, you need to do something about this." And LAPD, like, they didn't really want to do that, I guess. So he goes to the news and he gives it to the news, and then it airs on the news. Ooh, it obviously, you'll see a little section of it, but if you watch the whole thing, it's pretty bad. It's really bad. Okay. They wail on him like 50 something times with their batons. Okay. They end up charging 8 of the officers with assault. I think assault with a deadly weapon too. They go to court, in state court, okay, criminal charges, state court. They try these officers, okay? They try them. Everybody's watching. Everybody's thinking, yeah, this is the time. They're gonna take care of these, police brutality, blah, blah, blah. Wrong answer. They got acquitted. All 8 of them got acquitted. When that acquittal came down, LA started to burn. It just was like the fuse that lit the gunpowder off. And LA burned for like 6 days. Let me show you this real quick. When you watch this, you guys, okay, remember this is kind of it shows a little piece of the Rodney King beating. So if you don't want to watch it, close your eyes, whatever. But this happened like 30 years ago. I want you to think about, how is this the same, or how is it similar to the George Floyd situation? And how is it different? There are some similarities and there are some differences. So, see if I can do this without messing it up. So much for that Supreme Court case I was going to show you. How about some sound? And I should maybe pull up my thing here. I can't get to that. Let's go to. Nope, I want that. I'm probably not logged in my YouTube account, am I? Come on, Tiger, come on. Library. No, that's not my library. Oh, there it is. Is that it? There it is. Okay, these aren't the greatest, but here it is. Okay, so that's not the one I want. Where is it? That's not it. Where is it? Well, I'll show you this one. This is not the best one, but I turned the sound on, didn't I?
In 1991, 4 Los Angeles police officers were charged with assault after they were recorded brutally beating a man named Rodney King, an African American who had been pulled over after a high-speed chase. Despite the video being presented as evidence during the trial, with virtually the entire country watching, the officers were acquitted.
When those guys were exonerated, you just thought, what's it all for? All the civil rights movement, all the Black Power movement, and they're going to get away scot-free.
Tension had been rising in South Central Los Angeles for years. Poverty, joblessness, and homelessness had risen. Minorities felt that they were the victims of random racist abuse by the LAPD. The non-guilty verdict served as a catalyst, the spark that ignited the community's explosive response. That same day, at 5:25 p.m., police responded to their first call. The violence escalated quickly. Demonstrators were corralled at the LAPD headquarters, and Americans across the nation would soon be riveted to live coverage of a white truck driver being dragged from his van and nearly beaten to death.
It was anger, it was rage, it was a distrust of our system, it was feeling like we weren't valued as citizens.
Cars were overthrown, stores were looted, fires were set, and television news stations broadcast it all.
Michael, this is the worst fire I've seen today. We're at Avalon and El Segundo. This is a shopping mall.
The fire department is overworked, under attack even sometimes.
We are seeing a city in flames and indeed not very many bright spots.
The entire country's eyes were fixed on Los Angeles. At 8:45 p.m., the mayor of Los Angeles called a state of emergency. Even with a strictly enforced curfew and a public plea from Rodney King himself, it would take 2 days for the residents' rage to calm down. By then, the damage had been done. When the smoke cleared, the riots had left an estimated $1 billion in property damage and claimed the lives of more than 50 people.
It's cyclical, that the community that's been silenced rises up at some point and says, listen to us, see us.
The LA riots were an attempt to foment genuine social change through one seismic series of spontaneous revolutionary actions. More than 25 years later, the issues at the heart of the uprising in Los Angeles, race and racism, inequality and poverty, unemployment, and criminal justice, remain front and center in America. The struggle for more equitable economic opportunities for all Americans continues.
That doesn't really show you too much about. I'll show you. Remind me when I see you on whatever day I see you. I'll put it online with you guys on Thursday. Because I want to show you real quickly this one over here because I only got a few minutes left. So they didn't show you the beating and stuff. It was horrific. You can look it up on your own if you want to. Okay. But remember, the thing that kicked off the LA riots was what? The what? Indirectly, yes, the police brutality and those officers, but what was the direct, what was the direct fuse that just, boom, set off the bomb? The acquittals. Write that down. The acquittals of those 4 officers, that's what set off. I hope nothing like that happens this time, but I want you to see that there is some parallel between that and what's going on in Minnesota? Do you see some of the similarities? Yes, no? Racial tension, social injustice, people are frustrated. Throw in a pandemic too, people are frustrated, and that's minor compared to some of the other things. But a lot of tension is built up. And if for some reason they acquit him, which they could do, it's one of the 5 options, okay, we could be in for issues, right? So I guarantee you right now, law enforcement agencies all around the country, if not the world, are probably preparing for what's going to happen in a couple weeks. All right, quickly. Brown versus entertainment. How many of you guys, does anybody here play violent video games? I bet you do. Yeah. Violent. Call of Duty, Fortnite. What's some of the other violent? No, I don't play games too much anymore. Yeah. GTA. Okay. Here's the deal. About 15 years ago, actually more than that, California passed a law. Okay. They're all worried about these violent video games and the effect they have on kids, right? Huh? It's a legitimate concern. I'm sorry. It's a legitimate concern. Okay. All this violence, if you play violent video games and all this time, people get desensitized to it. Yes, I watch violent cartoons. I watch the Roadrunner or the Coyote get smashed by the Roadrunner about 1 billion times. Okay, I get it. But I wasn't, shooting people's heads off and doing all sorts of violent things in like a gaming environment. I'm talking about the games, not me. Jeez, relax. So they were all worried about this, and they passed a law. I don't know if we're able to see all this one, but anyway, I'll show you this one. They passed a law, California, that said basically
it's been a decade. 10 years ago
that these violent video games that have this content, they were basically, if you were under 18, you couldn't buy them. Okay, because it was, and it'll tell you more about it here. They basically said this has no literary value. This is called the Miller test. There's 3 things, blah, blah, blah. And so people freaked out. They said, oh, you're violating our First Amendment rights, free speech. If we want to make a video game that's violent, we can do that. It's our First Amendment rights, right? So it went all the way up to the Supreme Court. Supreme Court heard the case, I think 2012. It's called Brown versus the Entertainment Merchants Association, EMA. Basically, it's an association of gaming companies. And here's what happened.
This month, the United States Supreme Court heard arguments in a landmark case, a case whose ruling would recognize, for the first time, that video games are afforded the same protections the First Amendment to the
Come on, you're killing me, Smalls.
United States Constitution acknowledges for film, music, journalism, literature, and more. I'm Joe. Welcome to Same Name, Different Game, Guy Dead. Politicians and parents groups have been getting mad at violence in video games basically since they were invented. The first big row over such a thing was all the way back in 1976 over Exidy's Death Race, a game that shared a name with but did not carry the license of the 1975 Roger Corman classic Death Race 2000. Incidents like this would continue for years, with calls for censorship, calls of won't somebody think of the children, and so on. Of course, everyone around my age remembers the 1993 Senate hearings, including games like Mortal Kombat and Lethal Enforcers, which resulted in the ESRB. In a perhaps illogical extension of that, in 2005, a California state assemblyman named Leland Yee, yes, that one, drafted a law that was passed by the assembly and signed by then-Governor Arnold Schwarzenegger. This law prevented the sale of violent video games to minors, with a hefty fine of $1,000 per incident being levied against any retailers who violated it. But what's a violent video game? Is Mario violent? He jumps on the heads of Goombas and Koopas. Is Street Fighter violent? Tekken? Manhunt? Well, the bill just so happened to contain language that explained. A game that does either of the following. A. Comes within all of the following descriptions. 1. A reasonable person, considering the game as a whole, would find appeals to a deviant or morbid interest of minors. 2. Is patently offensive to prevailing standards in the community as to what is suitable for minors. And 3. It causes the game as a whole to lack serious literary, artistic, political, or scientific value for minors. Or B. Enables the player to virtually inflict serious injury upon images of human beings or characters with substantially human characteristics in a manner which is especially heinous, cruel, or depraved in that it involves torture or serious physical abuse to the victim. The first part of that is a variation on what's known as the Miller Standard, defined in a Supreme Court obscenity case from 1973. There are, of course, two problems with this. The first is that, quite clearly, it's subjective if a work has serious literary, artistic, political, or scientific value. But more substantially, at least as far as the courts are concerned, the Miller Standard had historically been applied to pornography. That is to say, works depicting sexual acts, not violent ones. Quite naturally, the Entertainment Software Association, a lobbying group formed and funded by video game publishers, alongside the Video Software Dealers Association, a lobbying group for retailers, immediately filed a legal challenge to the law. In August of 2007, the U.S. District Court for the Northern District of California ruled that the law did indeed violate the First Amendment. Schwarzenegger and the state of California appealed the decision, and in February of 2009, they were defeated once again. California's lawyers argued that a lesser degree of what's referred to as scrutiny should be applied here, as with obscene materials. That is to say, the state should only need to provide a rational basis for the law to stand. In this case, said rational basis being, effectively, won't someone think of the children? The three-judge panel in the Ninth Circuit, however, disagreed, since, as previously stated, obscenity laws have traditionally been applied to sexual material. As such, they applied strict scrutiny to the proposed law and its relationship to the First Amendment. This is a higher standard when it comes to looking at legislation, and legal scholars often say that it is strict in name, but fatal in fact. Schwarzenegger, of course, appealed again, and the court granted certiorari, agreeing to hear the case. And yes, a decade ago this very month, they did hear oral arguments from attorneys for the state of California and for the Entertainment Merchants Association, a group formed in 2006 after the Video Software Dealers Association merged with the Interactive Entertainment Merchants Association. This case was a big deal, not only for game players, but for anyone dedicated to the cause of free speech. The First Amendment has a few exceptions, to be sure, but they are few, and video games, being a relatively new medium, had not definitively been recognized as protected speech. You may laugh and think that's absurd, but consider how new media is often treated. In 1915, less than a century before the case we're talking about today, the Supreme Court under Chief Justice Edward White ruled in Mutual Film Corporation versus Industrial Commission of Ohio that movies were a product, a business, not art, and therefore not protected by the First Amendment. Would that happen again with video games? Or did the court grant cert in this case to make it clear that games were protected? In all honesty, I suspected from the beginning that it was the latter, but a lot of people had legitimate concerns that the former was on the table, that the highest court of the United States would say that video games were not subject to the same protections that films now were. But if you read the transcripts from the day the arguments happened, as I did on that day, it felt pretty clear which way this was going. And when the audio was released shortly after, for my own part, I had no question. The justices, from both sides, lobbed question after question at California's Deputy Attorney General, Zachary Morrazzini, barely allowing him to get a word in edgewise. From Justice Scalia comparing violent games to Grimm's fairy tales.
Deviant would be departing from established norms.
There are established norms of violence?
Well, I think if we look back...
I mean, some of the Grimm's fairy tales are quite grim, to tell you the truth.
Agreed, Your Honor.
To Justice Sotomayor asking if there were studies about the negative effects of Bugs Bunny cartoons, could California do the same thing to them?
So can the legislature now, because it has that study, say we can outlaw Bugs Bunny?
This isn't to say that justices didn't have questions for Paul Smith, the attorney for the EMA, particularly Justice Breyer, who pointed to literature indicating the differences between interactive entertainment and passive entertainment.
And both groups come to the conclusion that there is some tendency to increase violence, and the American Psychological Association, the American Pediatric Association sign on to a long list on, I think it's the Anderson side, that this does hurt children. I have to admit that if I'm supposed to be a sociological expert, I can't choose between them. But if I can say, could a legislature have enough evidence to think there's harm? The answer is yes.
And Chief Justice Roberts talking about, I think, Postal 2 from a description earlier in the case.
We do not have a tradition in this country of telling children they should watch people actively hitting schoolgirls over the head with a shovel so they'll beg with mercy, being merciless and decapitating them, shooting people in the leg so they fall down, I'm reading from the district court description, pour gasoline over them, set them on fire, and urinate on them. We do not have a tradition in this country. We protect children from that.
But Smith stayed the course, arguing repeatedly that there is not a First Amendment exception that precludes children's access to violent material. And in the end, that was largely what won the day. The Supreme Court, particularly the Roberts Court, has been very wary of creating new exceptions to the First Amendment, and in the summer of 2011, the decision was released. In a 7-2 split, Justice Scalia writing the majority opinion, joined by Justices Kagan, Sotomayor, Kennedy, Ginsburg, Alito, and Roberts, with a concurring opinion written by Alito and joined by Roberts. The court ruled that California's law was unconstitutional. Justice Scalia, in his opinion, said that in the prior term, in another case, we held that new categories of unprotected speech may not be added to the list by a legislature that concludes certain speech is too harmful to be tolerated. He further stated, the government argued in Stevens that lack of historical warrant did not matter, that it could create new categories of unprotected speech by applying a simple balancing test that weighs the value of a particular category of speech against its social costs, and then punishes that category of speech if it fails the test. We emphatically rejected that startling and dangerous proposition. Strange though this may sound, Justices Thomas and Breyer wrote separate dissents, expressing displeasure with the outcome for different reasons. Still, the court had ruled, not especially narrowly, that video games in the United States are protected by the First Amendment. This, of course, hasn't stopped certain types of people, including the NRA of all groups, from continuing to demonize video games. And they're, of course, free to do that, but at least it's been made clear that they're not free to use the force of the state to keep them out of players' hands. I'm Joe. This has been Same Name, Different Game Guy Den, and I'll see you next time.
So, that was Brown versus EMA. Hope you took a couple notes, and if you didn't, here's a recap to write it down so you know about this one. Hopefully somebody picks this as their case they want to do their paper on. Some of you might get fired up about this, okay? Hope you're all awake. Here it is, okay? Actually, you're going to help me, and you're going to help me. What is the big issue in this case? What's the big issue? What's the main idea? Loud, because I can barely hear you. Okay, we're getting there. What's the big issue? What's the the big right that they were saying is being infringed upon by this law? That's the argument they use, but what's their point? What's the main point of this case? Like, what is the question they were trying to determine? Are you there? Come on. What's the main question? What's the big question? With violent video games, okay? California passes a law that says no violent video games for you. If you're under 18, no violent video games for you, okay? That gets challenged in court. California loses the first round. They say, yeah, sorry, Sparky, you can't make that. You can't enforce that law. Okay? They appeal it. The state of California says, oh, yeah, we can. I'll show you. They appeal it. They go up to the appellate court. The appellate court says, sorry, Sparky, you can't enforce that law. Oh, yes, we can. We'll show you. We're going to take it to the Supreme Court, all the way up, the highest court in the country. Okay? We'll show you. So California lost once, twice, and then it goes to the Supreme Court. And you just heard all about it. Actually, if you were paying attention, you didn't fall asleep. That guy knows about this case. Okay? Obviously knows about this case. You actually heard the oral arguments. This is where the attorneys are in front of the Supreme Court arguing their case. Like, this is why we should be able to enforce this law. This is why you can't enforce this law. Okay? So what's the big question? What's the big thing they were trying to decide? Come on, somebody, seriously. Okay, what amendment was in question? What's the amendment?
The First Amendment.
Boom. Okay, this is a First Amendment case, so write it down. This is about your First Amendment rights. This case is about First Amendment free speech. Okay? That's what this is about. Brown versus EMA is about the First Amendment, free speech. And what the big question is this. Did this California law that restricted the sale of violent games to minors violate the Constitution, the First Amendment to free speech? Were violent video games, quote unquote violent video games, were they, covered by free speech? Were they covered by free speech? That's the question they were trying to determine. Okay. Okay, state of California said, no, they're not covered by free speech. Okay, we can restrict them. We can restrict them to minors. Okay, there's all these studies that show that violent video games, have negative effects on minors, right? They use that, right? Okay, boom. The video games and the Miller test, which what they talked about, the Miller standard, Miller test, there's three things on there. Do they have any literary value, scientific, political value? All that stuff, that's the Miller test. Okay, that's the Miller test. Okay, and so that was the question. Does this California law violate your First Amendment rights? What did the Supreme Court say? After all that, what did the Supreme Court say? Yes, the law, California law, violates your First Amendment rights, or no, it does not. Emilio? So that was already there. The ESRB was already there. Well, I don't know if it came after that or before, but it was right around the same time. So the Supreme Court in a 7-2 decision, you might want to jot that bad boy down because I like that one. That's a pretty big decision, right? That's almost unanimous. There's only 9 justices on the Supreme Court, 7-2. 7 of them agreed, said, yeah, this law violates the First Amendment. It's unconstitutional. You can't enforce it. That's why today you can go buy, GTA 5 or 12 or whatever they're on now, okay? You can go buy that as a minor. They struck down, so California lost not once, not twice, but 3 times, all the way up to the Supreme Court. California lost out, trying to enforce this law. Didn't work so well, okay? So Brown versus EMA is about your First Amendment. So these video games were ruled that they were protected under the First Amendment as free speech. That's the gist of it. So this law, this ruling in Supreme Court is the reason you can still buy violent video games. So now, which way do we go with this? Do you agree? Do you disagree? I'm sure everybody's going to probably agree with this, I would imagine. The question is, I want you to think about this. You can tell me if you want, okay? And if you don't want to, you can put in a chat box if you want. Do you think violent video games, regardless of this case, do you think violent video games have an effect on young people in terms of their propensity for violence? Do you think violent video games desensitize people, young people, to violence? Yes or no? Yes, this is a controversial question. Do you think violent video games can desensitize people to doing actual violence, not just video game violence? Sounds of silence. Nobody has a thought, huh?
They don't.
So Isabella, you don't think they do? So violent video games, GTA, Call of Duty, what's the other one? Anyway, all the ones we mentioned earlier. Playing those games all the time till 3 o'clock in the morning. You don't think they're going to have an effect on a person's actual propensity to commit actual violence, correct?
Right, they don't.
Okay. Anybody else want to chime in with their opinion? Nothing, huh? Not a single thing. Wow. Huh. Do I need to call on somebody? Okay. I want you to think about that. I'm sure you're sitting there and you just don't want to push the button, the unmute button. You guys don't want to unmute here. Think about it. Some people will say yes, and some people will say no. There's actually studies been done on this. You can look up the studies on violent video games, okay? That question doesn't really matter, does it? Because the Supreme Court has ruled that you can't restrict access to these. They're protected under the First Amendment. Okay, y'all with me on that one? Okay, so again, I hope one of you, picks this Supreme Court case to do your final project on. It's an interesting one. There's a lot of arguments, for restricting video games, a lot of arguments against it. Obviously, it went to the Supreme Court, so it's a big deal. We have video games now that have the labels on them, ESRB. Back when I was, a teenager still, or a much younger man, the big thing that they had back then was lyrics and songs. So lyrics and songs, and they had a big, in the Congress, they had a big committee. Tipper Gore, who was the wife of a senator at that time, who eventually became vice president. They had a commission on. They wanted to ban. Originally, they wanted to ban or restrict these lyrics, and then eventually they got a parental advisory statement on albums and things like that, And then that's the same thing like with the ESRB and all that stuff. The warning that's on there, that came out of this. That does not violate your First Amendment rights. Okay? Any questions about any of that coolness? All right. Any questions? I am going to put the assignment for this, okay, up on the Google Classroom, hopefully today. A few questions about Brown versus EMA. You guys, hang on a second. Let me make sure I get roll here before we go. We got a couple minutes. What period is this? Second. Also, go check out Rodney King. Learn about Rodney King. I'm going to make an assignment about that, compare it to what's going on in the Derek Chauvin trial. Okay, you better get on your unmute buttons right now. I'm going to go quick, going fast. So let me know if you're here or not. Nevaeh, I got you. Gilbert, I got you. Ashley, I got you. Marabella, I got you. Jasmine, you there? No Jasmine. Emilio, got you. Ureni, I got you. Marinette, I got you. Mr. Corrales, I got you. Salma, are you there? Yeah, I see you, Salma.
Yes.
Okay, Desiree, you there?
Here.
Good. Look at that. Quick, too. Carolina, you there? Okay. Luis, you there? Okay. Josue, I got you. Kiara, you there? Okay. Sherilyn, you there? Okay. Isabella, I got you. Azul, you there? Okay. Dana, I got you. Noah, I got you. Nicholas, Lamone, are you there? Okay.
Yes.
Are you there? Okay, gotcha. Angel, you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Nice deep voice. I like that. Michael, I got you. Emily, I got you. Hannah, I got you. Vince, you there? Okay. Miguel, you there? Oh, sorry, Willow, you're next. Willow, I saw you, Willow. Miguel, you there? Yeah, got you, Miguel. Nicole, I got you. Christopher Munoz, you there? Yeah, got you. Bryant, I got you. Marie, got you. Alyssa Padilla,
Yeah, I'm here.
got you. Eker, you there, Eker?
I'm here.
There you are. Seth, you there? No. Paulina, I think I got you. I think I saw you already, didn't I?
I'm
Paulina?
here. Hi. Good morning.
That's right. Good morning. Ariana, I think I saw you too, didn't I, Ariana? Yep, boom.
I'm here.
Okay, Mr. Joshua Torres. I don't see you. Lorenzo Torres, I saw you. Miguel Villanueva.
I'm here.
There you are. Leilani Zaragoza.
Here.
Okay, I think I got everybody. I didn't get you. All right, I'll post this, some questions about this. I think I'm going to add some taser questions. Anything we talked about in class today, I'm going to add them to the assignment. Okay. Bye-bye. Look at that. Timing is great. Bye-bye. Have fun.
All right, we'll give it another minute and then we'll get going here. Okay, let's go ahead and get going here. Before I start, does anyone have any questions that they need to ask me concerning what's happening here in class? The grades and stuff? Count of 5. All right, since they're not, we're gonna go ahead and continue on with our PowerPoint. We finished off from sentence frame number 1, so we're gonna continue from that. So let me go ahead and share my screen with you guys, those that are online. All right. Okay, so let's go ahead and continue on here. Let me go ahead and turn the lights off for people that are in class here. See a little better. Okay, so what we're going to talk about now is this thing called the molecular or kinetic molecular theory of gases. We're talking mostly for gases in these next couple of days. It's a theory that's based on the idea that gases, that the molecules are in constant motion, right? And in order for this theory to work, we have to make 5 assumptions. Now, real gases normally follow all 5 of these assumptions, but occasionally they don't, and we'll talk about that in a little while. Okay, so here are the 5 assumptions that we have to make. First one, gas particles are small and very far apart from each other relative to their size. So that means the distance between these gases are great compared to the actual physical size of the molecule or atom of that particular gas. 2, gases are in constant, rapid, and random motion. On this person. Okay, so those are the first 2 assumptions that we're going to make. Letting more people in. Okay, so. Okay, hopefully that's everyone else. All right, so those are the first 2 assumptions that we're making. Remember, there's a total of 5. Okay, assumption number 3, any collision made by a gas particle are completely elastic. Therefore, no energy is lost in the collision. So what we're saying is that when the particles collide, they just bounce off each other. There's no exchange of energy. If you look at the particles before and after the collision, they look exactly the same. So that's what we call an elastic collision. There's nothing that changes in the particle itself other than maybe the direction that they're moving. Okay. Number 4, there are no attractive or repulsive forces between the gas particles. Now we know that that's not true, right? There's always gravitational force between 2, masses. So there's always that. But if they're far enough apart, then then the gravitational force is so small it's not going to affect them. Okay, and there also may be electrostatic and other forces that may come into play. But for now, we're going to assume that there are none because the forces are so small, right? And 5, the last one, individual gas particles have individual kinetic energies, some moving fast, some moving slow, but the average kinetic energy is related to the Kelvin temperature of the gas. So the amount of motion the gas has is directly related to the temperature of that particular gas, okay? So those are the 5 assumptions that we're gonna make in order to have this kinetic theory work. Now, we have to distinguish between an ideal gas and a real gas. An ideal gas is a hypothetical gas that perfectly fits all of the assumptions of the kinetic theory of gases. Now, real gases are gases that are existing that do not behave completely according to the assumption of kinetic molecular theory. However, a real gas under right conditions can behave as an ideal gas, okay? Now, the behavior of real gases follow the assumptions of kinetic theory very closely, except in the following situations. So here are the 2 conditions. It doesn't have to be both be present, but at least one of them, where now you cannot treat a real gas like an ideal gas. Under very high pressure, gas particles are squeezed together so close that the forces of attraction between them influence their particles and behavior. So therefore, molecular theory breaks down. At very low temperatures, gas particles are moving so slow that the forces of attraction between them influence their properties and behavior. So you can treat a real gas as an ideal gas as long as there's not high pressure and not low temperature, okay? Now, let's take a look at pressure. What is the definition of pressure? We've already kind of talked about this. Okay, pressure is the force exerted by a gas per unit area. So the pressure can be calculated by using the formula force divided by the area. Now, when a force like weight acting on an area is constant, for instance, a small area gives a high pressure, right? For instance, like getting stepped on with a high heel, because the area of a high heel is very, very pointy, very small. And a large area gives a low pressure, for instance, like getting stepped on by a sandal heel, right? But if you look at this equation here, pressure equals force divided by area, if this is constant, right? If you change the denominator, if the denominator becomes smaller, the fraction becomes bigger. So that's why you get a bigger pressure. As the denominator gets bigger, this fraction gets smaller. That's why the pressure gets smaller, right? So you need to know a little bit about the mathematics behind this. Now let's do an example of this, right? Let's take a look at this ballerina here. Let's say the weight of the ballerina is 500 newtons. Newtons is just another unit to measure force. Okay, if you take a physics class, I'll explain to you what a newton is. So let's say her weight is 500 newtons. When she's standing on both her feet, the pressure on her feet is that her force divided by the area of her feet. When she's standing on both feet, the area of her feet is 325 square meters, right? Therefore, the pressure on her feet is 1.5 newtons per square meters. And that unit's actually called a Pascal. However, when she goes up on her tippy toes, now the area of her toes are a lot smaller. Let's say they're 13 square centimeters. They're going from 325 to 13. Now, if you put that in the denominator, now the number becomes 38 newtons per square centimeters. So it's gone from 1.5 to 38. So the pressure has gone up on her feet. When she goes up onto 1 foot, now the contact area is even less because it goes down by half, and that goes to 6.5 square centimeters. Now the pressure goes up to 77 newtons per square centimeters. So this is, a demonstration of how the area affects the pressure. And the same thing with the gas, right? The more gas you have let's say in a smaller container, you're gonna have greater pressure, okay? Because the area of the container is smaller when the actual container is smaller too. Okay, let's talk about atmospheric pressure. Atmospheric pressure is the pressure exerted by the Earth's atmosphere due to its weight. It's actually literally gravity pulling the oxygen on top of you. That is what you feel as atmospheric pressure. And it's about 2 pounds of weight sitting on the tip of your middle finger. And that's like the pressure. Now, barometer is a device used to measure atmospheric pressure. It usually contains some type of liquid. A lot of times, it used to be mercury. They don't use mercury anymore because mercury is very dangerous. And it moves up and down this particular tube. Let me show you an example of that. Here is a mercury barometer. It has a tube that's inverted in a pan of mercury. And you wouldn't really have this because this would be very, very dangerous. They didn't know that back then when they were actually developing this. And they put a tube inverted into the mercury, and there's a vacuum inside the tube. And what happens is the gas particles pushing on the outside of the mercury here forces the mercury up into the tube. The greater the force, the higher up the tube the mercury will go. And if you are at sea level, the gas pressure at sea level will force the mercury up the tube to a height of 766 millimeters. That is the distance from here to here, 760 millimeters. And that would be the height that the mercury will go up the tube at sea level, okay? And at different, pressures, you get a different height on the column. Greater pressure, the column will go higher. Less pressure, the column will go lower, okay? Now, let's say you're given pressure in either millimeters of mercury, the height of the mercury tube, or a new value called an atmosphere. Now, 1 atmosphere is the same as 760 millimeters of mercury. So we're just using 2 different types of units to measure barometric pressure, okay? So 760 millimeters of mercury is equivalent to 1 atmosphere, just like 2.54 centimeters is equal to 1 inch, right? We can use that to convert between inches and centimeters. We can use the same thing to convert between atmospheres and millimeters of mercury. For instance, if you want to convert from, let's say, millimeters of mercury to atmospheres, we use this first factor, right? 1 atmosphere is over 700 millimeters of mercury. Whatever unit you have in the numerator, that's the one you want in the denominator, so you can cancel it out, leaving you with the units in the denominator up here. I mean, in the numerator up here. If you start off with atmospheres, you want to use this particular conversion factors so that you can cancel out the atmospheres, leaving you with millimeters of mercury. So let's go ahead and do a couple examples. Okay, let's say you have 650 millimeters of mercury, and you want that in atmospheres. So you want the 1 atmosphere in the denominator, 760 millimeters of mercury in the denominator, and the 1 atmosphere in the numerator, and then you multiply. If you do that, right, the millimeters of mercury cancel out because you can cancel out units like you can numbers. And then it'll be 650 divided by 760, that gives you 0.855, and the unit that's left is atmospheres. You do the same thing here, right? 810 millimeters of mercury, you go ahead and use the same conversion factor, ATMs over 760 millimeters of mercury. And again, you cancel out the millimeters of mercury, so it's 810 divided by 760, gives you 1.066 atmospheres. All right. Now, let's say you want to go the other way. Let's say you're given atmospheres, you want millimeters of mercury. Well, you invert the conversion factor, then you want the atmospheres in the denominator, and then the 760 millimeters of mercury in the numerator, and you multiply accordingly, right? This way you cancel out the atmospheres. 1.5 times 760 gives you 1140 millimeters of mercury. And same thing here, right? You use the same conversion factor so you can cancel out the atmospheres. So 0.85 times 760 gives you 646 millimeters of mercury. So it's pretty simple. It's not hard, right? Now let's talk about a particular type of pressure and temperature. Let's first start off with something called standard temperature. Standard temperature is a particular temperature. It's either 0 degrees Celsius or 273 degrees Kelvin. Okay? Standard temperature is the temperature at which water freezes, either 0 degrees 0 degrees Celsius or 273 degrees Kelvin. All right? Now, standard temperature and pressure, all right, is abbreviated as STP. Standard pressure, we'll talk about in a little while, is when you have standard temperature and pressure, that's when you have both of them accordingly. Now, standard pressure is 1 atmosphere or 760 millimeters of mercury. Okay, so there you go. Again, standard temperature is 0 degrees Celsius or 273 degrees Kelvin. Now, if we're looking at the scales, sometimes we want to be able to convert between one to the other. Now, I've already shown you guys this before, but this kind of should be a review. Remember, 1 degree Celsius is the same as 1 degree Kelvin. There's no difference in the amount of change. And we also need to understand what 0 degrees Kelvin is. 0 degrees Kelvin is the lowest possible temperature, and that's called absolute zero. That is the theoretical temperature in which all molecular motion stops. Okay, so you need to know how to convert one to the other. Now, how do you convert one to the other? Well, you can do one of two ways. I'm gonna let you guys use your devices to calculate it out if you want to. Or you can actually use a formula. Here's the formula. If you have these temperatures that are equivalent and they are exactly the same amount, all they are slid along a different scale. So therefore, if we're looking at this, if you want to go from Celsius to Kelvin, all you have to do is add 273. If you want to go from Kelvin to Celsius, you just subtract 273. So let's go ahead and do some examples. Right? I have 110 degrees Celsius. Remember, go from Celsius to Kelvin, you add 273. You just add 273 to it, you get 383. You get minus 79 degrees Celsius, just add 273. You get 194 degrees Kelvin. If you ever get a negative degree Kelvin, you did it wrong, because you cannot have negative degree Kelvin, because 0 is the lowest possible temperature that you can get. Okay? Let's go ahead and convert the other way. Let's go from Kelvin to Celsius. Remember, and for this way, you just subtract, right? So it's 500 minus 273, you get 227 degrees Celsius. And for 150, subtract 273, you get minus 123 degrees Celsius, all right? So it's that simple. It's just adding and subtracting. So let's go ahead and finish up with our sentence frame for today. Okay. Blank gases are gases that would follow all of the assumptions of the kinetic molecular theory. Well, that is ideal gases. Oops, sorry about that. Real gases behave ideally except when they are at very high pressures and very low temperatures. Okay, an important pair of quantities measuring the same pressure called standard pressure is 1 atmosphere and 273 degrees or 760 millimeters of mercury, or for temperature, the standard temperature is 0 degrees Celsius and 273 degrees Kelvin. Okay, on the Kelvin scale, the lowest possible temperature is referred to as absolute zero. Okay, so what we're going to do here is we're going to go ahead and stop. Go ahead and stop the share here. All right, and for those of you guys that are on Zoom, all right, this is what I need for you to do. You need to go to Google Classroom and download the worksheet. Let me double check, make sure Google, it's there. And it is there. It's called Properties, Pressure, and Temperature of Gases. Download that, do that worksheet, and then assess that worksheet before midnight tonight in your student view. If you do not assess it before midnight tonight, you're going to have to either come into office hours or arrange a time with me after school to assess it, okay? Because it's in student view. Remember, student view only stays up for a certain amount of time, then goes away. All right, you won't be able to assess it unless student view is up, and the only way you can do that is have me turn it on, and you will only be able to do that either at office hours or after school. Okay, so if you don't want to have to do that, just get it done and have it assessed before midnight tonight. Okay, are there any questions for those people that are in Zoom or even out here in the classroom? You count of 5. Okay? If there's questions for the people in Zoom, you are free to leave to go do your work and assess it, please. Okay? For those of you that are in the classroom here, I already printed out a copy sheet, so you don't have to
And I think you guys are gonna go back full time in like 2 weeks. Do you guys know that?
Yeah, I heard my dad told me.
Oh, they sent it to the parents already?
Yeah, he said that we're gonna go from like 4 to 5 days.
Yeah, like a regular, yeah.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Is it mandatory or?
I really don't know. They like, well, we have a meeting tomorrow morning, we'll find out more information, but we were all like, what? Huh? Because I don't know where I'm supposed to put 40 kids. This room is too small for 40 people. Very strange to me. Do you guys not want to go back full time? How do you guys feel?
I would love to.
Prefer? This is very strange, me talking to the TV. This is very strange. I would not normally do this. When I start.
I kind of like being in the house. It's a little bad.
Oh, while school's happening?
Yeah.
No, it makes you chubby though. Like I feel like I'm not as active if I'm just sitting at home. And I don't get to know you. Like I feel like I don't know my students at all this year, which is so strange. Like I see you guys like once a week. I'm only gonna see you like 12 times as opposed to like every day. It's so strange to me, so strange, but it is the world that we live in. All right.
It's full time.
It's what?
It's full time in Arizona.
It's been full time everywhere except around here. Like, some of my friends' kids go to private school. They've been full time since like last November, I think it was. And they're like, your kids aren't at school all the time. I'm like, no, they're still on the computer. That's so weird. All right, good afternoon to you guys who are online. We're gonna go ahead and get started. So guys, I already posted your new calentamiento. So make sure you guys open your new calentamiento. You can open it in Google Docs. Please make sure you're saving it though, because I get 1,000 emails saying I tried and it didn't save. So you guys make sure you are saving it. Is that parts? Yeah. I can never keep nails, but those are cute. Everything Lord knows. All right, guys. So once you have your calentamiento open, please let me know. Oh, I'm not sharing my screen, huh? So you don't know what I'm talking about. Let's share my screen. All right. So now you guys make sure you I didn't put it as an assignment, so you have to open it from the stream. Guys, so your homework is going to be due not this Friday, but next Friday. So you should have 6 in total by the time it is due. Let's go ahead and get started. Julie, can you come on that? Sorry, Daniel, sorry. Last time you were sitting somewhere else.
Yeah.
That's why, sorry. Gracias, City. Gracias, Alex. Gracias, Francisco.
All of them?
Yes, please. Anybody else? Listo or lista? This one's about sleeping.
Mm.